Welcome to the I-80 Club National Fun League, recapping the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. Josh Peterson, Mike Schaefer with you as always. Schaefer, some say this is the best weekend of football every single year, and after a weekend like we just had, kind of hard to argue. A lot of good storylines, a lot of good games, and a lot of interesting matchups now as we get into the final few games of the year. How are you?
I am great, and I am one of those people who absolutely loves the divisional round. It's my favorite part of playoff football. It's honestly one of my favorite weekends in the entire year. You just get the Saturday, the two games, the Sunday, the two games.
Yeah.
Usually you have a really good game in there. And we actually they were all watchable. Like some years you get some that you get the Giants Eagles, or you get something in there that's just kind of terrible. And so, and then there's been a lot of super memorable divisional round games. Like,
yes,
I would almost argue there's more memorable divisional round games than there have been conference championship games in the same recent period. So, and obviously, two more games makes it a little bit more likely that you're going to have something that pops. But another great one here this weekend, and I think sets up what could be a fun conference championship. We're getting the matchup that I think it's hard because with the three teams in the AFC, I think you wanted some version of this. I think a lot of people would have preferred that the game on Sunday night would have been the AFC championship game, and one particular team had no pathway to the Super Bowl, but that's not how it played out. But I do think Bills-Chiefs has become sort of like the best or most exciting public matchup in football right now. Like, I don't know that there's any other game that you could give me that has me more like, I want to watch this from a just like, my team's not involved, this is going to be awesome. And pretty much every time these teams play, it's entertaining.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. I was just writing something down for my radio show later, and I essentially hit on what you just mentioned, and that is, like, people would have enjoyed the Chiefs losing on Saturday, but this is way better than having Texans Bills. I mean, like, and you and I were watching that game, and we're like, we're watching it together. We're rooting for the Texans, and yet, all of that said, of course, I would much rather have Bills Chiefs. I would have much rather had Ravens Chiefs. Whatever matchup we're going to get, you want this. And I think that the Bills want this. I think the Ravens would have wanted this. I think that they would want to go through this team. And so we're getting it. I mean, for the I don't even want to say it's a different generation, but I guess it is, man. 20 years ago, these games were Colts Patriots. And now for this era, oddly enough, though, this is the first time that they will have met in the playoffs. Well, I guess they met last year, but that wasn't for the AFC Championship. This is only the second AFC Championship game that these two teams are going to play against each other, which is weird because it feels like they've played in like 4 AFC Championship games, but this will only be number 2. Of course, we know about the Chiefs' postseason success versus, everybody, but in particular against the Bills. But the Bills have really owned them in the regular season, so it sets up for a great matchup. And then on the other side, where it's the 2 NFC East teams, it is one that ended last year in just like the most horrific way. We were talking about them every week last season on National Fun League and the Eagles. And then the team that had the second overall draft pick, and people were picking against them in round 1 and obviously picking against them in round 2. And not only are they here, but they had the most impressive win of anybody this whole weekend, did the Commanders, with what they did versus the Lions. So you have like the main event, and it's honestly, I love the way that they're scheduled to, that this is the AFC is the later game year, because this seems like the right way, right? Where it's like this kind of undercard of like, wow, this isn't what anyone saw coming. And the main event is, this is what everyone saw coming before the season.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those where the NFC Championship game, I mean, some dumb idiot got on this podcast and said 6 of the 7 teams have a chance to really make the Super Bowl, and nailed the spirit of the idea that the NFC is wide open, but left off one of the teams. I should have said 6 of the 7 and just been like, all right, the Vikings for sure, no chance. No, it's a Commanders team that is really, really fun on offense in that they're hard to defend. I mean, it's hard to tackle Jaden Daniels. He's incredibly accurate, which I think is one of the things that's most surprising to me about him that I picked up throughout the course of the season is that he's a super efficient guy that can move the ball with his legs too. And that's not always the combination that you get there with a guy who can extend plays and move things around. Like when he's on schedule, it's really tough to stop him. When he's off schedule, it's tough to stop him. Terry McLaurin has turned back into being a mini monster that he was a few years ago. He's a guy that's usually one of the more underrated wide receivers in the NFL because he has played on such a bad Commanders team for much of the last few years. A guy that just torched and didn't really torch the Bucs. He had a nice game against the Bucs, not a great game. And then he had a terrific game against the Lions. It felt like anytime Jaden Daniels needed something, he could go to Terry McLaurin, and the Lions had no way of stopping him. Now, the Lions weren't with all of their defense and everything else, but they just ran into a team that, frankly, had more offensive firepower than they could match, and the Commanders made plays. Like I'm trying to think if there's even a comparison to another type of team. Like, are they the 2000 and there's a lot of differences here, but are they like the 2008 Cardinals where it's just a solid team that's able to kind of make a playoff run with a really prolific offense? I mean, obviously Kurt Warner and Jaden Daniels have no comparison. But I can't really think of who this Commanders team would be similar to in terms of previous playoff teams and getting to this point. I guess the Jags that sort of fought the Patriots there in 2017.
Blake Bortles Jags.
Yeah, but I feel like this Commanders team has always had like an offense where you're like, man, these guys can score. I don't think that's really true of that Jaguars team.
Yeah, I think the hard part about trying to find a comp with them, and I know that I keep like thinking about this as I look ahead to Sunday, is a rookie quarterback. First of all, you've never seen a rookie quarterback start a Super Bowl. So it's like, I mean, odds are going to say that the Eagles are going to win and they will go to the Super Bowl and Washington won't. And so it's like, there's that is kind of hanging over everything. We've seen first year starters go to Super Bowls before that were in their like second years. Like Tom Brady was a second year guy. Mahomes almost got to a Super Bowl in his second year. But I think that in a way, I almost can't answer your question because I just can't get past that fact that this guy is a rookie and that he is doing this as a first-year head coach. It's a defense that is, under a defense first head coach is not anywhere near, obviously, the finished product, though they made enough plays on Saturday, where it's why they were able to win by 2 scores is because of the defense. Yeah. I know the offense put up 40-some-odd points, but the defense getting those takeaways and certainly the pick 6 at the end.
The defense scored on their own. Yeah. They added 6 of those 40 points.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So like that's the reason that they're here is that they made enough plays and they just kept taking the ball away. So I guess I'm filibustering right now because I am trying to find a comp right now as well. And I can't. What Daniels has done this year is so impressive. I don't remember my pre-draft thoughts on what he would be able to do. I'm sure I was worried about his size and weight like everybody else was, but how slippery he is and just his accuracy. I think the throw that I keep thinking of from Saturday night is they were moving left to right. I believe it was near the end of the first half, and he just hung it in the air, and it was only in the spot where one of his guys could get it. And that was a play where normally a rookie, I feel like, would either overthrow and then no one would get it or underthrow, kind of like the Goff pick at the end of the first half. He throws that one, doesn't have enough mustard on it, and Washington picks it off. And that was a massive play, again, just given the moment and the interception that Goff had already thrown. What Daniels has done, in a playoffs featuring, a soon-to-be MVP in Josh Allen, a multi-time MVP and Super Bowl winner in Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, a guy who has already gone to a Super Bowl. I'm finding myself most enamored at this moment in time by what Daniels is doing. He is ridiculous on a game-by-game basis.
He had a throw late in the game. I mean, it was a fourth quarter where they're just trying to pick up first downs to run clock so they don't have to give the ball back to the Lions and then, have to put their defense back on the field. And he just hits a slant route perfectly to Terry McLaurin. And the coverage wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't like Darrelle Revis in his prime or anything. Or Darrelle Revis. Is it Darrelle?
Darrelle.
Yeah, Darrelle.
And it's Terrell Owens and Darrelle Revis, yeah.
Yeah. So, it was one of those where just again, like it's a high pressure throw and it was smooth. Like it was just a dead center mass throw to McLaurin on the run to hit the slant for the first down. I mean, he had a scramble to pick up a first down that was important. Like he just makes little plays. I mean, you could see that in that Bucs game too when they were trailing. It just felt like he's gonna make plays. I know you're really, really concerned for Sunday that you're gonna have to watch another Eagles Super Bowl, which would be the third appearance in your lifetime here, right? So 2017.
Well, it'd be fourth in my lifetime, but third,
yep.
third in the last.
Forgot about the Donovan McNabb
puke
game. Yeah,
for sure. Yes, I'm frightened. I'm frightened about this fact that it could happen yet again.
I don't know. I think I'm excited for both of these games. I mean,
I'm not.
Whenever Washington and Philadelphia play, it's usually kind of a weird game to begin with.
Dude, hey, you're not wrong on that. Even going back the last 3 years.
Yep. You had Kenny Pickett this past year, the one where the Commanders came back and won it. And famously gave my father-in-law the win in the 33 pool that everybody was mad about because he won $900.
Asshole.
Yeah, exactly. If you're listening, Vince, Josh thinks you're an asshole. And then, the Thursday night game they had, I remember we were sort of texting during that, and the Eagles looked like trash, and the Commanders looked like trash. And I was just like, this game is awful. Like, and I was really high on the Commanders at that point because I had picked them to win the division, and I was like, see, I'm going to be right. And then they just got smashed in the second half of that game and looked like, it's like, oh, they don't belong on this level yet, blah, 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 blah. Was it last year or 2 years ago? They were the first loss that the Eagles took, 2
years ago
here recently. Like,
and then last year, both games went down to the wire.
Yeah.
Like, that was throughout the early part of the year last year when the Cowboys were like, they were seemingly 2 games behind Philadelphia until December, and then suddenly they just raced by them. But the Eagles, every game essentially was close, including multiple games versus Washington, where it was like, I'm watching with my dad, and we're like, can they get this done? Nope, A.J. Brown touchdown. No way. The Eagles are going to get a victory. And, so the games have been oddly close. No matter how good Washington, or rather, no matter how good Philadelphia has been and how bad Washington has been, these games have gone down to the wire, and you mentioned the December game. That was the one where Hurts got a concussion. Kenny Pickett comes in. They have a solid lead, and then slowly but surely Washington's able to chip away. What this would be for you is the Eagles are my Packers, and the Commanders are – I don't hate them like you hate the Lions, but, I mean, that's what I have been given. I've been given – because I don't even hate – like, I don't like Washington. I've never been able to gin up the hate for them like I have Philadelphia and New York. But that's also because they haven't been good. And now,
it'll get there. It'll boil in your chest.
Dude, I mean, how frightening is it to see a rookie quarterback take them this far where, like, at a certain point over the last couple of weeks, I've had to take a step back of like, oh, my gosh, is this going to be in my life now for years and I'm going to have to deal with this? The answer is yes. And so that's really exciting. So this is just go Bills. I mean, I need the Bills. Otherwise, the end of this football season is going to have me saying no off-season National Fun League podcasts. I actually hate football now. So go Bills.
Well, we don't want that. We don't want that at all.
It
would the equivalent for me would be the closest would be 2010, where the Packers and Bears played in the NFC Championship game, and we got way too much Caleb Haney, and the Packers were just gifted a run to the Super Bowl.
Yes,
they
were.
Often are.
Classic.
That was, famously the last time they won an NFC Championship game. So
that is, that's true.
Just required not having Jay Cutler in it to allow him to get there. I think that's the primary ingredient. But yeah, I totally get it from your vantage point, and that's why I'm going to ask this. And I feel like I'm going to ask, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank it as if I was you. Like the worst possible Super Bowl combination for you would be Chiefs and Eagles.
Probably. But for the record, if anyone is like, oh, yeah, what would you do? It is so easy to root for the Chiefs. Like, there are zero qualms. Yeah. Give me the three-peat.
I'm saying there's 4 potential matchups.
Yes,
and then I would assume that you would still rather see Chiefs Commanders than you would Bills Eagles, because you just don't want the Eagles in at all. Yeah,
Probably.
so that would be your third. Your second would be Chiefs Commanders, and your first choice would be Bills Commanders.
Correct. That's the order that I'm rooting for. Even though, again, I would admit, just like as we talked about at the start of the pod, with rooting for Houston over Kansas City, I would admit Philadelphia Buffalo would be a much more intriguing matchup. But the possibility of Philadelphia winning the Super Bowl takes away any of the pleasure and the joy. Not to mention, man, if they win, she's gonna be peacocking around for 2 more weeks. Like I don't need that. I just don't want that. So yeah, I'll go Bills Commanders, Chiefs Commanders, Bills Eagles, and then what was the other one? Chiefs Eagles. Yeah, that would certainly be the least. What's your order? I assume we're a little similar.
I would just flip the Bills would be the 1-2 spots, and then
no matter what,
regardless of opponent, and then from there, they'd be Chiefs Commanders, and then the one I absolutely have no interest
Chiefs
in
Eagles.
Chiefs Eagles is the worst possible matchup out of this because there's no storyline that's of interest. It's two teams that are a worse version of who played in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Like two teams that just make every game less fun to watch most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Even in their we haven't talked about it, but even in the Eagles win against the Rams, and you get the awesome snow and all of that, but it was still just this plotting shit fest for a large portion of it, which, Eagles games are. I keep saying, I'm hearing my verbal crutch as I'm talking. This is bad. This is bad.
Let's go to this comment then, because it kind of goes to something you and I were texting about. DZ says Eagles have a below-average head coach and quarterback, but they have Saquon and a great O-line. You and I were texting during the game yesterday, and I said that Jalen Hurts has the best situation. Maybe I didn't say it that exact way, but essentially, I would love to have, if I'm a quarterback in the NFL, and you can give me any group of players. This is not coaches, so I was just looking at the guys on the field, and I said his situation is the one that I would want the most because they have a really, really good offensive line, even with a first-year starter at center in Cam Jurgens. But they have a really good offensive line. They have the best running back in the NFL. They don't have the best receiving core in the NFL, but Brown and Smith are really, really good. They have a solid tight end. And so all of that, and in particular, what tips the scales for me is the O-line running back combination really does make everything, like it just allows for them to do so many things. And yet, as you just said, like they're very plotting at times. I mean, Hurts gets injured again. Like the guy, it's so weird yesterday, dude, because he scores on the long touchdown run. And I was like, when's the last time that he actually did that? And yet he didn't even look fast. He still looks slow. He has, I think going back to a couple years ago when he got hurt late in the year, and then he was banged up pretty much all of last year, he has definitely lost a step. But he has this tremendous group of players. The infrastructure around him is just so good. And yet, they still play with their food at the end of the game, and the Rams have the ball in the red zone with a chance to go to the NFC Championship. Like, they are just such a perplexing team in the way in which they are able to have successes, but also, and I see this on a weekly basis, make their fans mad. Like, what is going on? How are you almost going to lose this game that it feels like you've kind of dominated for 45, 50 minutes?
Yeah. Would you say the Eagles dominated that game?
I mean, sort of.
They dominated. I feel like they dominated the last 7 minutes of the game when the snow was at its worst. Yeah. I don't feel like they dominated throughout the rest of that game.
I guess maybe kept them at arm's length. I thought not much of it.
They had two giant plays, two
huge
giant rush plays that basically swung the tide of the game. Actually, you could even say 3 because the first Saquon long run.
Yes.
I mean, so that otherwise, if the Rams weren't giving up super long runs, the Eagles' offense would fall apart before it was going to score.
Yeah.
And their offensive line, for as good as it is, absolutely struggled. I mean, it should make some of the Minnesota Vikings fans feel a little bit better about what the Rams were able to do in Philly.
That's true. Yeah.
Against that offensive line. I mean, they had 6 sacks in that game, and Jared Verse looks incredible. So shout out to Kwesi for Minnesota. Once again, taking a guy where there's someone else out there. Hopefully Dallas Turner, who I like Dallas Turner, but this better not be another Lewis Cine situation, or I'm going to be real mad. real mad. So I honestly, for as concerned as you are about a rookie playing on behalf of the team in which you desperately need to win,
Yeah.
I would feel better as a Commanders fan about my quarterback than I would as an Eagles fan about my quarterback in this upcoming game.
100%. 100%. It's just, can the rookie do it? Can the
Right.
rookie go on the road in that environment, against a team that, they're going to be familiar with, but obviously they're going to be familiar with the Commanders as well. And so, it really will be an interesting game, but God, I'm just frightened.
With what you saw at the end, and I know the snow was a big part of this factor, and they were up 2 scores, so you're playing defense a little bit differently. I wonder if the key for Washington isn't going to be getting up tempo at different points in the game just to keep the Eagles off balance, because they have such a good defense if you allow for them to get everything set and all of their pieces on the field, and they can match you speed for speed or power for power. I mean, we're talking about the Eagles offense and how much you like that group. I think their defense is even more impressive in a lot of ways, because it's just like the who's who of guys who kicked ass in college football that somehow don't get drafted at spots that are, commensurate to their ability. So their defense has always kind of stood out to me, and in part because it's like, oh, there's Jalen Carter. Hey,
Carter's
it's
coming
Nakobe
into
Dean.
his own.
Oh, cool. Cooper DeJean's going to be a guy, like all of these things. And then Darius Slay, who feels like he's 75 years old.
Still making plays.
Him commit pass interferences every single time for the Lions. He's such a good, I think if he's on your team, you feel like he probably doesn't get away with murder. If you have to go against him and you watch him and you're like, this guy's hands are all over every receiver he defends.
Was he the one who made the play up the middle that he just read the gap perfectly? Was that him, or was that a different defensive back where it was just like, wow?
I think that was Gardner Johnson, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was CJ. Yeah. You're right. Yeah,
I know exactly which play you're talking about.
That was incredible.
It was funny listening to Chris trying to break it down, because I mean, really, it felt like one of those signature Levante David, like, I think this is coming, I'm going to shoot my shot, and it's 100% correct.
Yeah,
that was a nice play. I think the Eagles will win, but I really think the Commanders are going to make that a game. I really do. Where I'm at with it is Buffalo and Philly. I think Buffalo is better than Kansas City.
Let's get to
the way that they handled Baltimore, and we haven't even really talked about that game, and I think we're kind of saving it.
Yes.
Man, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was an impressive game. I'm kicking myself all year long. I've been on the Bills, though I've been on the Bills to win the Super Bowl for the last 4 years. You finally
told yourself that Baltimore was a wagon.
Yeah,
and you got all in on the wagon talk, and you forgot, Josh. You forgot nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
I did forget. I will admit to that. The turnovers from Baltimore, and I mean, this is a game where haunting is how Baltimore fans are going to feel about this loss, where they have so many plays that they will look at and they will say, but what about this and what about this and what about this? But the thing is, Buffalo just didn't make the mistakes. Buffalo did enough. They did also well. Like, they made the plays too. It's not like, the drop at the end, that's on Baltimore. The fumble though that Mark Andrews had, that was on Buffalo. And I'm so impressed. Like, this is a good team, of course, but I really watch them at this moment, and I wonder if you agree with me, Schaefer. It is this guy just lifting everybody up at the same. This was supposed to be the step back year for Buffalo. Remember the offseason and all the players that they lose on both sides of the ball, and it was like, maybe they'll be a 9 or 10 win team, and they'll probably bow out in the first or second round. And I never was a believer in that, but how Josh Allen has put this team on his back. He gets, his stat line isn't that great, but he has the 2 rushing touchdowns, and he doesn't have the mistakes. And that's the thing in the game yesterday. That is what you needed to do. And they get the plays at the end of the first half, and it's just absolutely massive. It was everything we hoped for. I guess some people are like, oh man, I wish they would have gotten the 2, because then Josh Allen would have had the ball tied, and either we get overtime or we get a game-winning field goal. But it goes down to the very, very end, and it's super memorable, and it's great. It's a great undercard for the AFC Championship, because to be the best, you got to beat the best. Well, these teams were fighting to get the opportunity, and it was awesome. I love watching this Bills team, man. They are so impressive.
Yeah, if you were to do a cross sport reference, that's not even really a sport; it's more pageantry. But in pro wrestling terms, you got the number one contenders match between the Bills and the Ravens, and it comes down to not even really a controversial finish, but one in which you can easily see how the other guy would have come on top, and the Bills end up winning this game, but the Ravens were right there, and that has to just burn. It has to absolutely burn. The play by the linebacker from the Bills, whose name I do not know off the top of my head, on Mark Andrews to punch that ball out.
Incredible.
And I don't know if you noticed this, Josh. I noticed it after that, but the Bills were swinging for the football. Like, that was part of what they were attempting to do. I don't know if they did that. Like, I watch a lot of the Bills, but it's more, admittedly, it's more they're on the screen in the usually top left corner. They're usually choice number 1 for me in the quad box, and they're in the top left corner. And I'm normally like locked in when they're on offense. When they're on defense,
not so much on defense,
near as much attention. And so I can't speak to whether they do this all the time, but I saw after that forced fumble, maybe that was the galvanizing thing. There was probably 5 other attempts from different players of just trying to punch the ball loose. Even on that final drive of the Ravens, there was a nice catch. I don't know if it was Likely or who it was. It could have even been Justice Hill. And you just see the defender he's attempting to kind of make the tackle, but he's also just trying to get around the side, get leverage, and just punch down. Yeah. And he wasn't able to peanut punch it out for, the Peanut Tillman thing. But just an incredible defensive play there. It felt like the Bills sort of hung on, but it also felt like they knew they had an 11-point lead, and they played it that way in the second half.
I would agree.
They weren't going to go for broke because they didn't need to go broke. And I think they did everything by the book, even right down to you and I had the discussion. I felt like they had to kick that field goal. You make it an 8-point game because it's really effectively a 2-touchdown game at that point. A short yardage touchdown with the 2-point conversion. And if you don't kick that field goal and you don't score the touchdown or get the first down, was it a first and goal or was it a?
So it was. You talking about when they finally went for it or when they kicked it?
When they kicked it,
it was 4th and goal at the 2.
Okay, yeah. I just think, and I generally lean on you want your best unit on the field, and that's the offense. You want Josh, but. Yeah. To me, it was just like knowing what that game was going to be, making Baltimore have to get the 2-point conversion
to score twice. Essentially, you got to score the touchdown and get the 2. If the game, Schaefer, if the field goal makes it 7 versus 8,
then I think you go. Then I think you maybe go touchdown there. Or you try to go touchdown there.
I thought Bromo brought up something interesting in that moment where he was like, on the 3rd down play, they did their play. They did the shotgun Josh Allen keeper, and the Ravens were there. And he said, if you get stopped on that play, like, do you really want to try again? Should they have done the sneak tush push on 3rd and goal? I thought that was an interesting discussion. And ultimately, like, you definitely made the correct argument. And I'm not just saying this because in the end, the Ravens scored and they missed the 2-point conversion. But you're right. If you score and if the field goal is going to make it a 7-point game, dude, I think Baltimore might go for 2 regardless to try to win the game on a walk-off. Instead, though, they have to score a touchdown and they have to get the 2-point conversion.
And the 2 was there. It was there. They just didn't, that's
a little behind him.
Part about football. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a perfect pass, but it's something you expect your tight end to be able to make.
Especially
a guy as good as Mark Andrews, Yeah. But that's the killer. And there's a football writer that I follow. He used to work at CBS, and now I think he's with the Washington Post and does some different stuff. But Jason La Canforia, if you're familiar with him, so he's out of the Baltimore DC area, and so he covers the Ravens a lot, or writes about the Ravens a lot. And after the Andrews fumble, he had a tweet where everyone will come after Lamar Jackson if you don't win this game, but if you look back, right there alongside of Lamar Jackson is his tight end, Mark Andrews, who's come up small in big moments, and his offensive coordinator, who's come up small in big moments, and no one talks about that enough either. And what do you have play out at the end of that game?
Yep.
is you don't use Derrick Henry on the 2-point conversion.
Yep.
You don't use him at all effectively. And then you don't really use Lamar's best asset, which is running. He's sort of in motion. He could have taken off there. And then it's Mark Andrews and he doesn't make the play. And that was all like 35 minutes before that 2-point conversion happened. And it just felt like when Mark Andrews dropped it, the first thing I thought of was reading that tweet. It's like, oh man.
Well, did you see the other one last night where someone named Michael Megan, and this was before the drive, said not ready for the Lamar discourse when he leads this touchdown drive and someone drops the 2-point conversion.
Oh no.
That literally happens. And you're right, like Lamar, and I haven't engaged with any of the Take Factory yet this morning. I haven't listened to Simmons. I'll do that at some point in time. So I don't really know exactly the angle of folks, but Lamar has the 2 turnovers early in the game, right? Both of them were in the first half, the interception and the fumble. Mark Andrews, though, he has the fumble and then obviously the drop 2-point conversion late in the game. And you're right, like Henry, he was slow at the start, which he is a lot of the time, but then he got going in the second half. Like,
got to keep feeding him.
Yeah, it is interesting in that moment in time. It is, and I'm always curious about 2-point plays. I think it is such a fun window into a team and like, okay, what do you think is your best stuff? And to roll him, like, I get it, right? Like, it kind of gives Lamar an option, but in that moment, I have to imagine they are going to be so keyed on his legs. And they were, and yet the guy was open. So it's like you can't even be critical of it, but it, there is that question of like, yeah, but could you have kept it in his hands? Could you have done something with Derrick Henry? But the play should have worked, So it's like, how critical can I be if it was all right there for him? And the guy, pass a little behind him, drop pass, and suddenly the Bills are now matching up with the Chiefs. And dude, we barely talked about Kansas City. There was a stat at the end of the broadcast on Saturday as the Chiefs won. This is Mahomes' 16th playoff win in his career. He is now tied with Joe Montana, which is unfathomable. The other part, like, that's wild because he's barely been playing football. The other wild part is that Tom Brady is still 19 wins ahead of him in terms of postseason success, which is ridiculous. Patrick Mahomes, 84.2% winning percentage in the playoffs. He has made the AFC Championship game as every single year as a starter. He has made the Super Bowl 4 times. He is going for his 5th Super Bowl appearance and obviously the 3rd straight. I said last year after the Super Bowl shape that he's the best quarterback of all time, and I still feel very, very good about that opinion, even though I know he is not the most accomplished yet. I don't think anyone has ever played the position as well as he has. And the respect, the begrudging respect that I saw from everyone yesterday as the Bills closed it out, it just says a whole lot about how he is viewed historically, where it was like, everyone's like excited for the Bills, but there's this, but let's see what happens because the Chiefs are going to find a way to win because they always do. That touchdown pass that he had when he is like going down and he's falling forward and he somehow just delivers a strike. I don't want to say only he can do it because, we've seen Josh Allen, we've seen Lamar Jackson and others make ridiculous throws, but here's this guy yet again. I cannot believe that we have gone from dynasty to dynasty the way that we have because Tom Brady and what he did for years was ridiculous. And now we are seeing it in a different way, but in also similar ways with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And yet, I'm with you. I think the Bills are the better team. We saw them earlier this year. Buffalo won that one. It was in Buffalo. This one will be in Kansas City. But I think that I think that they have had the better team. I think Josh Allen has played the position better this year. But, it could potentially be another all-timer on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it's interesting. The begrudging I saw was people begrudgingly just saying that
the refs are going to screw the Bills.
Yeah, no matter what happens, the refs are going to make sure Kansas City wins. So
yeah.
Which again, some of it is hard because it's not like Patrick Mahomes is the one in control of these calls.
Sure.
But the 15-yard personal foul that he picks up, that no one else in the league is getting that call. There was no contact with the helmet at all. He just whipped his head back. At one point he either tripped under his own feet or flopped to try to get an out of bounds call. He's going to earn a reputation that I don't think you really want. And I think for some that are very anti-Chiefs, he might already have it, which is unfortunate because he's still an incredible quarterback. It's still as much as Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson raised their game this past season, you still in a draft are, if you're sitting there with pick 1-1 to start any franchise in football, there's no way you're taking anyone other than Patrick Mahomes. And it's coming from a guy who absolutely loves Josh Allen and thinks that he is equivalent or better in a lot of the physical tools. But when chips are down, you're going to take Patrick Mahomes every time. Yeah. So hopefully we don't have to talk about officiating. Hopefully it's just a game that plays out and, the better football team comes out on top next Sunday. Hopefully it's another classic like we got, a few years ago in the divisional round. Last year's game wasn't as good, though the Bills were right there. I mean, it was a missed field goal from Tyler Bass. When they lined up for the field goal, not the chip shot one, but when they were up 21 and this field goal would have put them up 20, or they weren't up 21, but they had 21 points, and this field goal would have put them up 24-11, I think. Mm-hmm. Tyler Bass is lining up for that, and all I was thinking about was his miss against Kansas City last year and the window that left open and everything else. And I don't know. I just want to fast forward to. I want that game. I just want that.
It's going to be awesome. Great. Like on one sideline, to go to what you just said, chips are down. Like the Chiefs, and obviously we see this with their fans, but they are going to go into this game without a single doubt about what their guy is going to give them on the sidelines, what Patrick Mahomes is going to do on the field. I would love to know how the Bills feel, because like I'm a believer in Josh Allen. I think you're a believer in Josh Allen. I'm guessing that some of our listeners are believers in Josh Allen.
Think? We send Josh Allen text every week for the last 4 years. I
just didn't want to put words in your mouth.
You have to say think that.
But how do they feel?
The fact that you got off the bandwagon of Josh Allen to jump on the Ravens wagon just you could ride the flavor of the month.
Yeah, I know. I feel like an idiot. Yeah, maybe, and it wasn't even that. It was more of a believer in. Honestly, I was a believer in the infrastructure of the Ravens more than anything else, and yet the infrastructure let me down. But like the Chiefs are going to believe that their guy is going to make all the plays. The Bills are they're going to say all the right things, but until it's happened, do they totally believe that? I think they do. I think that they're the better team. I'm with you. I just want to fast forward to this game because I think it has the potential to like really be special. Sam McEwen had a couple tweets about it last night in terms of the most anticipated championship games in his life. And he brought up like that stretch where we had Cowboys 49ers a lot. Of course, the Manning Brady ones are going to be the ones that I always think of. But dude, this is pretty special. Like a team.
Where do the Bucs Eagles games rank for you?
0, the negative. I'm trying to think of and this was the one that I responded to him with, and this was a one-off. But I remember in 2013, all year long, I thought that the 49ers and Seahawks were the two best teams in football, and I thought the Seahawks were the best. And I was like, I just want that game. And we got it, in Seattle in one of the best atmospheres that I've ever watched. And that game went down to the wire, and Richard Sherman makes the crazy tip, and they go to the Super Bowl, and they just bludgeon the Broncos. I don't know if the winner of this is going to bludgeon whomever the NFC participant is, but you and I have been on the thought all year that the AFC is the best, and the top of the AFC is the best. And I think that the game on Sunday night is going to be for the Super Bowl champ. Like whoever wins that is going to win the Super Bowl. I felt that way about yesterday's game. Whoever wins that is going to win the Super Bowl. I still feel that way. This is pretty special though. And these are games where, as just an appreciator of history, but also of living in the moment, like, again, I don't think we could have asked for anything better for the AFC Championship. This is awesome.
I mean, we have a podcast dedicated to a league, and it's called National Fun League. This is everything that we want.
Yeah, 100%.
This is why I always laugh whenever there's a message board threads about how college football is so much better than the NFL. I get it. Like your favorite team might be Nebraska, but there's no way you can sit there and tell me that Bills Ravens could be matched by any college football game. Just the quality of play, like the stakes,
the history,
and there's going to be a chance that tonight's national championship game with Notre Dame and Ohio State could be really, really good. There's something about the way the NFL has warped my brain. I can't allow for anything to be better. It's the best singular entertainment that there is. And we get to go from being hyped for Ravens Bills to the same thing now for Bills Chiefs to inevitably when the Bills win, We're going to be hyped for Bills Commanders because that'll be wild. So it's just an incredible product, man. It really is.
It really is.
I absolutely love it. We're so blessed. We were so blessed to get that game because there's a lot of different ways, like that could get screwed up. You could have, if the Broncos or the Steelers had come through or whatever it is, or if the Texans had pulled off an upset, but instead we're getting what we wanted all year, which was these three awesome teams in some combination. The AFC Championship is coming from, or is going to be won by one of these teams, and they all look great. And it kind of sucks for the other two because you'll get lost in the annals of history. And we'll probably not talk about this Ravens group if they can't finish with at least a Super Bowl appearance.
They got
we're gonna talk about them in a way that is sort of unfair, but that's kind of how Josh Allen's being discussed and the Bills have been discussed. And so now the Ravens
you're right.
Because
for all there's obviously, and we've got to get going in a sec, but for all the Manning Brady comparisons, Manning at least got through a few times, right? Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers in that era, they got through. The random Joe Flacco team, they got through. The crazy part about this era is that it's Chiefs, and then it's the Cincinnati Bengals for 1 year, and then, of course, the end of the Tom Brady Patriots run. Like, those are the teams that have gotten through. And so will someone else finally break through? Because until that happens, this isn't even Manning Brady. I don't know what it would be. What is the equivalent of that era where it's like, it wasn't
Manning Brady. I mean, it wasn't Manning Brady really until 2006 when they broke through. The running joke was basically, oh, cool, regular season Peyton Manning, but here comes playoff
Peyton Manning. Yeah,
and Josh Allen doesn't even have that. It's just that his team isn't as good as the Chiefs.
Correct.
Because the Chiefs have built a fantastic offense and then transition it now into a hard-nosed defense that can challenge any team in the league just on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah. Like it's incredible the transformation they've made. We don't really talk about that because Patrick Mahomes is going to take up so much of the airspace of it, and then throw in Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift and everything else. But that defense is legit. I mean, if they beat the Bills, it's because, again, defensively, they have studs. We just don't talk about it in the same way.
Yeah, we saw it last year in the AFC title game. They got 2 quick scores by their offense, and then they just played defense all
game on the ball
against the Ravens. Yep, that's what they did. Real quick, I'm going Bills. I'm going Eagles. What are you going with?
Bills Commanders. I had the Bills to win the Super Bowl before the year. We're sticking with that. The Rams are now out, so the Commanders move in.
What is that? A rematch of Super Bowl 26. So 30 some odd years later.
I never know what number it was. It was Doug Williams.
I'm pretty sure it was Super Bowl 26. So no, that would have been Rippin', I believe. It would have been the end of the.
Was Doug Williams the Giants?
No, that was the Broncos one.
Okay.
Yeah.
See,
so
I can't be trusted. Just like I didn't know who Barry Foster was.
Well, nobody does. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today on National Fun League. Schaefer, what can the folks look forward to this week on Husker 24/7?
Who the hell knows? There's still the transfer portal. Nebraska still wants another offensive lineman. Maybe some guy from the Ivy League will be here at some point in the next week.
Nerds.
We'll see. They're really canvassing for another offensive lineman. And we'll see what they're able to bring in, and if it's even someone that can start for them. Because that's the other thing. If you're just taking an offensive lineman and taking an offensive lineman, you've done that. His name was Jacob Hood. He didn't do anything for you. So I think if Nebraska's trying to get somebody, it's going to be someone that matters. If they don't, it tells you that they just felt like what they have internally is better than what they have externally.
All right, so you can find that Husker. Yeah, Husker 24/7 Sports. I-80 Club rolls on this week. Wednesday night pod will be a little earlier than normal. We'll be on at 7 because Nebraska plays USC that night, and there will be an after Nebraska ball that will follow that. Nebraska ball brunch show on Friday, regular Saturday morning coffee show on Saturday, and then Schaefer and I will be back a week from today. We will talk about the Super Bowl. Get ready for that for another edition of National Fun League. Stay tuned. We'll have the time and schedule for that coming up over the next week or so, but either 7:30 or 7:45. Next Monday morning. Schaefer, as always, my man, thank you very much. Have a great week.
You too.
All right. Thanks for joining us on the I-80 Club. Take care, everybody.